Well, good morning, everyone, and or good evening and good night, wherever you might be in the world. My name is Douglas Burns. I am founder of D&B Productions, a commercial photography firm based in the wonderful city of Houston, Texas. And it's almost rodeo season down here. Yeehaw! It's another couple of weeks, and we're going to be into our annual rodeo season. And by the way, guys, quick plug: if you've never been to Houston during the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, think Mardi Gras with cowboy hats. That's what it is. It's the biggest party in town, and it's a whole lot of fun. So if you're able to make it down here in March, we'd love to see you. Grab your cowboy boot, grab your cowboy hats, and eat a bunch of fried stuff on sticks. But that's not why we're here. That's not what we're talking about today. Joining me this morning is Mark Collins, founder of Freedom for Life. A wonderful gentleman who's going to be talking to us about all things on how we can improve our business and improve ourselves at the same time with a lot of mental strategies, as we're going to be talking about. There's a lot of mental focus this morning. So, Mark, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for the invitation, Doug. And I appreciate you letting me know what Houston has to offer. I'm feeling like I'm going to be missing it out in March.
Oh, you got to make it down here, man. It's a ton of, it's 20 straight days of rodeo, bulls, bucks and broncs and kids and farm animals and county fair and the concerts all rolled in one. It's a great time.
Absolutely. I'll get there someday.
I'd love that. Let me know. I'll take you some of the best barbecue in town.
There you go.
Well, Mark, appreciate you. Just so that everybody kind of knows who you are and where you're from, and let's start with just a little bit of backstory. Tell me just a little bit about what it is that you do and where your background is.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. For me, everybody has their own title. You could call me a coach, a mentor. I deal with transformation. So I typically will tell people I'm a transformation coach, really not necessarily a business coach, although I help you with your business. What I tell the folks that I work with is I'm not here to make your business better, but to make you better in your business. And where does that come from? It comes from my own journey and really starting and trying to become a successful entrepreneur. And in that place, really, for me, trying to overcome some of the struggles and challenges that were stopping me from the success I was desiring. And it wasn't necessarily the nuts and bolts, the accounting and the HR and the manufacturing or whatever it is that is in your field. For me, it was really the mindset and the belief system and the thought process that was really me holding me back. And so for me, Douglas, in that place of trying to unpack that, trying to figure it out, trying to, as I tell the people I work with as well, trying to become the person that I believed I could be, that person on the inside showing up on the outside with confidence, assurance, purpose, and passion. And in that place, when I was able to figure that out, able to understand what it took for me to unlock those things, seeing that in the journey of other entrepreneurs and people around me, professionals and folks who were just trying to succeed at whatever they were doing, I found there was a commonality in some of the challenges, imposter syndrome, fear of failure, and that. And so I started to have conversations, which led to, quick teachings, which led to weekend seminars, which, continued to progress to really me wanting to create a full-fledged blueprint, a robust program that people could lock into. And in that place, be able to get from wherever they were at to the success they believe they could have, which is how Life Mastery was born as far as a course. And I wrote a book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, Not by Default. All underneath the business, umbrella of Freedom for Life. These courses are the strategies and tools to help people get to that place where they're hoping to be, which is not just having the success, but not having that imposter syndrome and fear of failure come along for the ride.
Well, I want to come back to the imposter syndrome and fear of failure, because I think that is something that I think everybody struggles with. I know it's very common for me to be in a room. It's like, am I really supposed to be here? I mean, amongst that's a real thing. But let's talk about Freedom for Life, because I mean that's what you've named your company. That's your philosophy. Let's talk real briefly. What is freedom? How do we define freedom for life?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the first word, which is freedom. And for me, that freedom is me being able to live, whatever you want to call it, right? Your best life now, or everybody has their own phrase for it, a maximized life. What it really looks like to me is you living out the life that you're created for without the struggles and the issues that come along with it. Doesn't mean I'm not talking about the challenges that come up, these hiccups that happen, those things that, come out of nowhere, but really it's understanding that you are greater than the things that you're struggling with. And so for me, it's all about the mental, thought processes, those inner voices telling you you're not good enough. So, the outworking is the imposter syndrome and things that we can start to unpack, but really it's saying, can you have a life where those things don't have an impact? They don't have a voice. They don't have really a say in the direction and the level of goals that you're willing to go for, the level of dreams you're willing to have. So freedom looks like you lived out exactly who you're created to be without the noise of your life getting in the way.
And what are some of the tools? And obviously, guys, please check out Mark's material. I know he goes much deeper in depth into it, but just real briefly, what are some of the tools that we can utilize if we're dealing with all this noise in our head? Because it's a lot of mindset.
Yeah.
And it's one thing I've learned along my entrepreneurial journey is mindset is probably 80%, 20% is the work that we actually do. That actually puts cash in the bank and food on the table. But that mindset can be really hard to deal with. So what are some of those tools that you utilize and that you work with on your clients that maybe that we're missing as entrepreneurs and business owners and business leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, Douglas, it was really in unpacking it for myself, it was seeing what was missing from the programs that I was involved in. So, before I created Life Mastery as a transformational program, I tried a bunch of them. Whatever I tell people, whatever I could afford, whatever I could purchase or get for free, I was trying to, invest in because I believed that there was more than the life I was living. It wasn't just the business success. I was successful in business while still struggling with imposter syndrome and fear of failure. The misconception I had, which, frankly, is that big shiny object we all hear about. Once you're successful, then everything is going to work out. Once you're successful, then you're going to be fully confident. You're never going to doubt yourself again. You're never going to worry that you're not good enough or whatever the things are that you're telling
that
yourself.
brass ring. It's all easy street at that point.
Right. It's the Instagram lie, right? It's that seeing all the things that are successful and exciting in other people's lives without hearing the backstory and understanding that. And, I think about one of my clients, a guy named Brett, who was that person as well, highly successful in business development and real estate. While at the same time, nobody realizing the men he was confronting at 3:00 in the morning. Those conversations, those worry, that anxiety and stress that would wake him up in the middle of the night because, you're in the middle of something big in your business. And it's not that there could be a failure or a bad decision that you have to work out. It's that I could become a failure. If this thing doesn't work out, I'm the failure. It's not the business I'm walking in. So, so it's something that a lot of people deal with. But here's the truth of the matter. I tell people you're either living from where you're created to be or what your life has told you. That stress, that imposter syndrome, that fear of failure, anxiety, fear, and worry, they come from someplace, and they're not necessarily a reaction to the business and the tasks you're walking into. They're an identity statement you're taking into your business, your life, that you're trying to either prove right or prove wrong. And so our life, everybody has got a life that's told them something, whether it's struggling in school, whether it's having relationships that didn't work out, whether it's, failing. And I say that with air quotes if somebody's listening and not watching, because many times we take failure as an identity statement, not an experience to walk through. And in that place, it's not that my business failed or the decisions didn't work out or I didn't accomplish the thing I desired to, but that I'm a failure because it didn't work out. And so we all have these voices that come from a background that's told us who we are. And in that place, you try many times to overcome it through your experience, through your, academics, entrepreneurship, and athletics, right? Those are the three things I tried to do. And in each of those cases, I got to that goal, but I didn't stop that feeling. And so where do you start? With us, everything starts with identity. Again, who you're created to be versus what your life has told you. So one quick tool that we use is an I am statement. It's in my book, and it's also a lesson in my course. The I am statement is basically the answer to this question: who are you apart from your experience in past and your successes and accomplishments? Many times, I'm sure you've met people like this, Douglas, and maybe
because when you're talking about we need to separate ourselves from our business.
Exactly. Separate yourself from your successes.
That's I've identified myself as that artist photographer for since college. Before I had all this gray in my beard. But that's how I identify myself. But you're telling me that even though I identify myself that as a photographer and as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, that's not who I am. That's just one aspect of what it is that I do. Maybe I am a husband. I am a father. I am this person in this community? I mean, am I on the right track here, or
no, absolutely. You are who you are. Who you are is apart from your title, your role, your position, your possession, your income, right? But most of the time we identify ourselves with those things. And like you talked about with yourself, you're a photographer. We're really, what I would tell people that work with me is you're not a photographer. A photographer is an outworking of who you're created to be. Who are you versus what you do? So in photography, I'll just take a quick guess and say you're probably a person who's creative, right? Who has an eye for detail, who is passionate about really capturing and encapsulating moments of time. And in that place, photography is the way that you do that, the medium that you use and you choose to do that. So you're not a photographer, you're a person who's creative, you're a person who's intuitive, you're a person who's, authentic and passionate and purposeful. And then, so those are the things that would be a part of an I am statement. And in that place, you start to figure out, okay, well, this is how it works out. The reason that's important, Douglas, is because here's an interesting thing. I deal with people. I actually had a conversation with somebody less than a month ago. You get to this place of success in your business, and then you sell it. You get a buyout. You try and liquidate it so that you can have the income and move on to the next thing. Here's the interesting thing that happens, and it happens with people who lose a job. It happens when people have a business that fails. Who are you apart from those things? There's this identity crisis that happens when you lose the thing you believe is you. Or maybe you can't do it any longer, right? Heaven forbid you have a health condition where you can't do that thing. Or your children move out of the house. And so now all of a sudden, my whole life was wrapped around my family. Now, right. Who am I apart from that? When you use your outward actions or your outward outcomes to identify who you are, when those things are lost, so are you.
So we're trying to define ourselves from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Exactly, because in that place, you're unstoppable in all circumstances, in all seasons, and all occasions. In that place, you accurately see who you are. And here's the other challenge. Brett's one person, myself included. When you identify with the thing that you do, and you reach the top of the mountain, and you find out that your fear of failure, your imposter syndrome, the worry, anxiety, and stress and challenges that you thought were going to go away show up there as well. When in that place, it leads to fatigue, it leads to burnout, it leads to all sorts of medication and all sorts of other things that you're doing because I thought this was the answer. And when you put so much struggle, so much time, so much effort and energy into finding something that's a solution and it isn't a solution at the end of the day, there's a huge downfall that can happen on the other side of that. So for us, it's really saying, okay, past experiences, struggles, challenges, and issues, set those aside. Your successes, your titles, your roles, set all of that aside. Who's the person looking back in the mirror? Because that's the thing that can never be taken away. That's the thing that can never be shaken. That's the thing that can never be undeniably talked about as an imposter syndrome. I can't be an imposter living out who I'm created to be. I can only be an imposter when I feel like I'm not good enough for the thing I'm walking into. The more you start to unpack it through an I am statement and some other tools that we use, the more you start to understand the capabilities you have, the answers that you are. I tell people this, are you the answer to the room you're walking into? Or are you the question to be figured out? If you're living from identity, understanding who you are, you're the answer to the circumstance you're walking into. You're the answer to the challenge you're walking into. You're the answer to the conversation in the room you're walking into. You're not the question to be figured out. And in that place, answers happen, strategies come, the directions that you desire to happen do happen, the outcomes, the success, the increase that you desire for your life actually shows up. And it shows up in a way that I will call effortless excellence. I'm not trying to measure up. I'm not trying to work it up. I'm not trying to, exhaust myself to get there. I'm simply allowing myself to use my created value, who I am, to bring those answers to pass. And it sounds a bit esoteric, but there's a tangible truth in it, because here's the fact of the matter: who you think you are, you'll become. If you believe you're the answer, then all of a sudden you give yourself the mental processes to find answers. If you think you're the question, you'll find answers and reasons why you're not good enough, you can't measure up, you're going to fail. It's the choice that you make, but it all comes down to thoughts. But all of those thoughts come down to what's your identity that you're trying to live from, my past or my success, or who I'm created to be. In that place, you'll start to see that man or that woman lived out.
I'm wondering, I know you don't really get into this, at least on some of your website materials, but from a money standpoint, in our culture, which is Judeo-Christian based, money is the root of all evil is the thing that so many of us grow up with.
Yeah.
The love of, let me rephrase that. I think the proper quote is the love of money is the root of all evil. and pursuing money, pursuing monetary success, or success of any level can be
Yeah.
sometimes feels like, man, I don't know that that's really what I should be doing. Maybe is that am I being authentic to that? I mean, look, I don't think anybody would argue you should work to support your family, that you should that work in general is good for the body and soul.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's, some of those mental things that are holding us back. It's like, do I really deserve having more than I currently have?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much of that plays into some of that imposter syndrome, some of that we're defining ourselves by externals that you were discussing a minute ago.
I think that's a great question. And I think in general, it really comes down to this. You'll either rise or fall to the level of life you believe you deserve, you believe you're worth, you believe you have value for. And so, so that's one thing. I'll unpack two things. The first thing is that one is you'll never be greater or achieve more than you believe you're capable of or that you're worth. So again, it all comes back to identity. I tell people this joke. My wife won't let me have a tattoo, but if she did, the tattoo would say this: identity is everything. Because it literally all comes back to identity. You will never grow more, achieve more, do more than you believe you're capable of and you believe you're worth. Right? I think at the end of the day, we want to feel that we have value and worth. We want to feel that we have impact. Every person everywhere. They don't want to feel like they're just another cog in the wheel, just another individual. My life doesn't matter. We all believe, I think, innately that we matter, and we try and prove it through the things that we do. The work that I do is help you unpack that and tell you that it's not from the things you do, but who you are lived out. Your value comes from who you are. It's innately given and it's there eternally. So what that means that I don't have to work myself up to have value. I just have to allow myself to unleash it in those things, in my artistic endeavor, in the relationships I have, in the businesses that I start. So there's that part, Douglas. But the other part is this: many times we think that money is the answer. And so, I'll be happy when I have that new zip code, when I have that bigger home, when I have those things. And what I would tell people is this: the work we do isn't focused on money and achievement, but it doesn't stop you from doing it either. Life mastery, if I could give a quick definition, is you living from who you're created to be, right? Identity at the highest level you're created for in every area of life. What I love about money and income is it's a report card of the impact I'm having, whatever that is, in creating a product and providing a service and providing something of value that brings a return. So I don't ever tell people that you shouldn't strive for the best that you can have. And for some people that may be a millionaire, multimillionaire, billionaire. For some people that may be just achieving a nonprofit status and being able to create something of value in the world, or having a job, a business, a role within somebody else's dream in a bigger organization, right? It doesn't matter what the thing is. What does matter is not using your outcome to prove your self-worth and identity. I tell people you're either living from who you're created to be, or your world has to make up the difference. Many times when we don't know who we are, back to identity, we create our identity through our income. And the challenge again with that is with Brett and John and Vance and Evelyn and so many people that I've worked with, you get to the top of that mountain, you have that level of income, and you find yourself no happier than when you started, because outcomes, success is a horrible substitute for identity, but it's a great outworking from identity when you're trying to reach for something, because that's the thing that matters. What you'll find is other areas of your life are a disaster. We probably know stories off the top of our head of somebody who's successful in one way and then they're a catastrophe in others. Or you reach the top of the mountain and you self-sabotage because it didn't answer the question that you had. Am I really worth it? Am I a person of value? And in that place, you medicate, you sabotage yourself, you do things that are probably not healthy for you or those around you. That's not the goal. What we have is life mastery, you living from who you are at the highest level you're created for. And so we really drive people towards understanding, okay, so when you understand who you are, now you can start to create a vision of what does that look like in my business? What does that look like in the outcomes and the products or the services or the things that I can provide? What's the highest level of life I'm created for? And how can I have a vision for it and go for it?
So how do we go and define who we're created to be? And folks, just so that you know, Mark is a Christian pastor as well. So a lot of his information comes from that perspective. But I think that this is universal in its application, whatever your faith tradition may be. But how do we figure out who we're created to be? I mean, that can be a rather daunting if you've never gone through that process, or if you're thinking about it for the first time. That can be a kind of a scary proposition if I've always defined myself externally by my success or my family or my family's success. If I've always defined myself by externals, looking at who am I created to be, I mean, it may not have a reference point for where to even start on that. So how do we get started on that? How do we define that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I am a person of faith. So for me, that really informs everything I do. But even if you're not a person of faith, I believe everybody has this sense on the inside that there's more than the life I'm living. Whether you're struggling with imposter syndrome or fear of failure, or you're really wanting to start that business, but you're your own holdup. You're holding back. You're overanalyzing. You're stopping before you're starting. Right. I think for every person, there's this sense of and this desire to have impact and worth, and that comes from an understanding that there's more for me than where I'm at right now. And that was exactly what drove me before I was a Christian. It was what brought me to personal development programs and books and courses and teachers and gurus and all those things, trying to figure out what's the roadmap to get me there. I had this sense on the inside. How do I have this man show up on the outside? So, for us, the first tool is an I am statement. It's separating you from your experiences. It's a paradigm shift that says that while my experiences are things I've walked through, good, bad, challenging, horrible, and everywhere in between, they don't define who I am. They don't tell me who I am unless I allow them to. So for me, one of those quick experiences was, I struggled with math in school and I wasn't really good at it, to the point where when I was going from the first to second.
We all had that struggle with math in school.
Yeah. But the interesting thing was, so for me, going from first to second grade, I wasn't really as developed, I guess, as I needed to be. And so I had to remember a conversation where a teacher told my parents, you should hold him back and have him take that grade one more time. He's not fully developed and doesn't need to be there. For a young person of 6 years old, hearing somebody of authority telling people that you love that you're not as qualified as the other people around you, the statement that young man heard was, you're not as smart as everybody else. So in that place, it's not an experience I walked through. It was the identity statement I took from it that Mark's not as smart as the other people around him. So when I did struggle with math in school, what was the thought process that happened? What was the internal language, right? That inner voice, what was it telling me about myself? It was saying, remember, you're not as smart as everybody else. When I was going to college and trying to figure out a degree program and I was struggling with the different classes, do you think I stuck to it and really tried to work it out to the end, or did I give up on the class and drop it when things started going wrong? Because that inner voice, right? It's not something conscious, but it's the reaction you have to the life you're living. Going into my marriage, my wife, bless her heart, thinks I'm a pretty smart and intelligent individual. And so there would be things where she would tell me, you need to fix this, or you need to do this. And this anger would come up on the inside. And I couldn't figure out what was coming from. This is all part of Unpacking Life Mastery, the course that we have. And so until I started to figure out there was an identity statement that I took from my life that told me you're not as smart as everybody else. And so you avoid things that are going to challenge you that you may not be able to succeed at, because it's going to prove that voice right. And you're only going to do those things you can control, those things you can manage, because, again, you want to prove that that voice is wrong. And you can only do that when you know everything going into it. Well, how much of life happens that way? How much of business happens that way? So those inner voices, they have a life, they have an identity statement you take throughout your life. And it's not just me, it's everybody out there. Apart from knowing who you are, your life has a loud voice that directs you, even if you don't know it. And so for us, it's unpacking it. So this I am statement and you being more than your experiences is separating you from those voices and those identity statements you've taken through the challenges of your life. But it's also the successes. So what the world is telling you, okay, this is your answer. When you get that job, when you get that role, when you get that promotion, when you have that income, now all of a sudden you'll feel great about yourself. Therefore, everybody else will. Come to find out, nobody else really thinks about it that much. And you have the wrong vehicle if you're trying to do that. I know that through my own experience and so many people that I work with who are at the top of the mountain and whatever their field they're in and are still struggling with those same 3 o'clock in the morning moments while they're walking through all of those things. It doesn't mean they're not successful, but it does mean there's a level of stress that comes along with it that robs them of the joy of it. So for us, it really comes down to this, Douglas. What's this I am statement, who you are? Whether you're a person of faith like myself or not, if you are a person of faith, That conversation starts with God and simply saying, God, who did you make me to be? And write it down. But even without that, some of the things I described about you, they may be right or they may have been wrong, but I guarantee if you think about what are the things that drive me to do this, what's the thing on the inside that is a passion of mine? What's the thing that I can do without thinking about it? I lose track of time, right? It's this thing that I'm naturally invested in because it's just, it fulfills me. It brings great excitement to me. It makes me feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm made for. Those are the attributes of that I am statement. We do have a couple of others, and if I could unpack them really quickly.
Sure, absolutely.
The first is, so we do the I am statement, and the second is we do a celebration list. And the celebration list is, I tell people to write down 20. I've written over 100. It's the answer to this question: what do you love about you? Many times, especially in the entrepreneurial space or people that are really, high achievers, I find the things I'm lacking first versus the things in myself that I should celebrate. And this isn't your accomplishments, the things, the things you have on your wall, the diplomas, the trophies and all of those things. It's what do you love about you? Because again, you're not the sum total of your outcomes. Who you are is who you are apart from those outcomes, and your outcomes are a byproduct of your identity. So in this place of celebrating who you are, you start to see value in yourself before you've accomplished anything, which frankly, most adults don't realize in their own life. You have value before you start. You don't have value when you're done. So I'm not the sum total of my things. So when I have that accomplishment, now I'm somebody of worth. When I have that title, now I'm somebody who matters. When I've created that business and have success there, now I'm somebody who's worth something. Now I'm somebody of impact. You have your impact before you start. You don't have it when you end. It just works its way out in the things that you do. Photography, you're blessing people in the character and value that you have, but that value you have creates the product you have. The products you have don't create the value you have. So that celebration list allows you to say, I'm a person of worth and value. I don't have to find the negatives in myself, because here's the truth. Again, another psychological, physiological truth is that you'll drive towards the things you focus on. The more I find things to celebrate about myself, the more I give myself the ability to find more of those things in myself. The truer the picture is I see of myself. You're not the sum total of your failures. You're not going to be good enough when you accomplish stuff. You already have those values in your life. When you start to celebrate yourself, you start to see those things in you, and you start to minimize the challenges that you're walking through. You start to give yourself grace at those times when you make mistakes. And in those places, you're not trying to overcome anything and prove who you are. You're simply living from that place. Third tool we use is the accomplishment list. And this is, I call it a victory list as well. This is, what are the things you've done in your life? Again, I've at this point written 130, but I invite the people that I work with to write 20. And the reason I do that is, this as well as I do, Douglas, when you get to 30, when you get to 40, 50, 70, every marquee thing, every amazing thing you've done in your life is off the list. When you get to 70, 90, 100, now I was writing things like, we've owned 10 cars in our lifetime. We've owned 4 homes. I graduated from junior high, not college, which I did, not high school, which I did, but junior high school, right? It's breaking down them to the ordinary successes in your life. And some people think it's kind of foolish, but here's the interesting thing. If you look at an Olympic athlete, the only reason they're successful at the Olympic level is that they celebrate themselves on the daily level. When we celebrate
practice that daily.
When we celebrate ordinary success, we'll reach extraordinary success. If we won't celebrate the ordinary success we have, then we're this kind of person where I'll celebrate myself when I get that Olympic medal, when I have that rodeo belt buckle, right? When I'm at the top in my field, I'll celebrate myself then. You rob yourself of the joy of the experience walking through it. And in most cases, you'll never reach it anyway. When you can't celebrate ordinary success, you'll never find extraordinary success. And the secret that you get from this list is this. You find that you're succeeding on a daily basis in your life. You're succeeding on a daily basis in those ordinary things that many people don't celebrate. But in that place, fear of failure has no place to land, because I know that I'm a person that succeeds on a daily basis. I have this list, and it shows that that's the kind of person that I am. And so in that place, I'm not trying to succeed to prove I'm not a failure. I'm succeeding simply because that's who I am lived out. And so it comes from that list. So when you have an I am statement, when you have a celebration list, you have an accomplishment, you have a much more well-rounded, much more truthful, much more complete vision and version of who you are than you will when you began.
Kind of reminds me and forgive me, but there's an old SNL sketch, daily affirmations. I'm trying to remember now exactly how to do it. I'm good enough. I'm likable enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. But I mean, it does kind of seem like, and I'm not trying to belittle anything you're saying, but it does kind of seem like we need to, on a daily basis, just step back and say, you know what, life's okay, and I'm okay, and I'm going to do well today, or I've done well today. I've accomplished because I know. Look, there's. My wife will be the first one to tell you. I get to the end of the day, and my day usually ends, if I'm in the office, it usually ends around 7 o'clock at night. That's how awful I am about walking away from the office. But it's like, I don't feel like I've gotten everything done that I thought I was going to get done. And now I'm beating myself up because I didn't get everything done that was on my to-do list, even though my to-do list was probably way too big, and it wasn't really thought out well, and I was trying to overachieve and do too much, and but now I'm beating myself up, and instead of celebrating the fact, hey, you know what, I actually got that project done. I actually got that project done. I created that new marketing piece. I talked to this person that needed to be talked to, and I left these 12 messages today, and instead of looking at the good things that I did, I'm like, there's 14 that didn't get touched or looked at.
Yeah, and instead of having a statement that says I accomplished everything I could get done today, and being satisfied knowing that you've done all that, and it's not you, it's an everybody thing. And if I could address that affirmation thing, because that's absolutely profound, and you're not belittling it. What you're finding is the hole in the affirmations. Because here's the truth of the matter. I've created affirmations for myself. There's many programs that are built on affirmations. The problem is they're an idealized version of somebody I don't even believe I am, or that I don't believe I can achieve, or they're just these generic phrases that we use to occupy our mind that never have any connection with who we actually believe we are. And so we actually use affirmations in our program. So those things that I did, that script on the I am statement, celebration list, accomplishment list, that is the groundwork for affirmations that you're going to use in our 3-step transformational strategy, mastering your thoughts, words, and actions. And so mastering your thoughts really comes down to, what are the thoughts I'm thinking? Am I intentional in what I'm doing, or am I allowing them to just come and try and bludgeon them into submission? That's what those generic affirmations do. So what we do is we pull those I am statements, accomplishment list, celebration list, because they're reminders of who you're created to be, the reminder of the value you have, the reminder of your identity. And those are the things we use to create an affirmation. That's the affirmation you remind yourself of on a daily basis. Not some generic idea of I'm great, I'm powerful, I'm successful, I'm loved, or whatever. Those are all attributes that we want to have in our life. But if they're not associated with the truth of who we see ourselves to be, then they'll never be lived out, and there'll never be anything that really changes our thought process. So for us, for sure, you use affirmations, but they're aligned with identity. They're not an idealized version. They're not somebody else's idea of what good or success looks like. They're tied to who you are lived out, like that person of compassion and care, the person of vision and drive and creativity that you are. When you start to remind yourself of those things, you start to allow yourself, when the photography doesn't work out, or that shot was horrible, or I didn't have the right lighting, right angle, whatever the things are. I don't know your industry specifically.
You actually described a photo shoot I had last week that it's like, I know I could have done better. I wish I'd done better. Why is this looking like the way? Yeah, no,
Yeah, it's not that you don't work in excellence. It's that you understand that what I am as a creative person, did it work out the way I wanted it to here? No. Does that devalue who I am and the impact that I'm creating? No, that doesn't create that at all. You give yourself grace in those moments where you don't reach that level that you believe you can, because in the midst of those, you're still living out who you are. And at the end of the day, that's the thing that brings fulfillment. Success is simply accomplishing something, working harder, longer than anybody else. Fulfillment is me living out the life I know I'm created for, investing who I am in ways that matter to the community I'm investing in, but they matter to me too, because I feel most alive when I'm doing them.
Folks, if you're joining us, we're live this morning with Mark Collins of Freedom for Life. This is Framed Perspectives. I am your host, Douglas Burns, and we're talking mindset today, and talking about really freedom in our own minds, about separating ourselves from our business. So many of us get tied up with our business and tied up with our identity in our business as entrepreneurs, as business owners. And trying to not have, trying to walk away from those feelings of imposter syndrome and stress, and all those things that we pile on top of ourselves. So, Mark, I appreciate you all that you've been talking about this morning. What would you recommend to someone if on a simple scale, just to get started, on a daily practice? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm working hard on my business, or I'm a business management person, and we're growing the business that we're in. And we're dealing with stress, and we're dealing with this, am I really in the right spot? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I living, for myself and whatnot? Or am I just living to live? Which I think also I know there are days when I'm just getting through the day. But what are some of those things maybe, we should be doing first thing in the morning before we check our email, which I know I'm horrible at, because I check my email while I'm still sitting in bed before I even get up to go to the bathroom. So, what are some of those things that we should be doing for ourselves just to start the day off right and put us in that right mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, it is what I tell the people I work with, you remind yourself of who you are before you get up, not after you do. Before your first challenge happens, not after it's already on you. Before the first task of your business has to get done, not after you've already completed it. So the reason is that, again, if you're living from who you are versus what your outcomes are, you'll only do that if you remind yourself of it ahead of time, if you give yourself a script to live from. And so for us, it starts with the I am statement. So 2 things I would tell you. First off, create an I am statement. Again, you, apart from your experiences in your past, you're not the sum total of what they've told you, and not your successes and your income and the things that you use to prove who you are. If you separate those 2 categories aside, this person looking back at me again, I hate to keep picking on you, Douglas, but that's a person of compassion and care, right? A person of intuition and desire, a person of meticulousness, right? A person of creativity. The interesting thing about that, Douglas, is who you are one place is who you are every place. So it's that same man that shows up in his business for photography, that shows up in relationships and being able to solve problems and find solutions. It's the same person that works out community in this community and being able to have those relationships and those things with other people. It's the same person who finds creative ways of finding solutions around the household or with his health or with his finances, right? You can't separate yourself from your identity, and who you are is lived out in all those places. The more you understand who you are, the greater you understand the impact you're supposed to have. So taking it back to a business perspective, when you start to unpack an I am statement, an identity statement, the character of who you are, I tell people this, it's a chapter in my book and a lesson in my course. The title tells it all. It says your character's your calling. A lot of times we're looking for outward ideas and understandings and skill sets and abilities to be able to add value to our organization. The truth of the matter is it's you that's the value add. It's you that's the solution in your organization. The more you understand who you are, identity statement, I am statement, the more you'll understand what part of you, what giftings you have, what abilities you have that are going to be invested in your organization to change things. Not everybody who's on the accounting sphere who can deal with the numbers, the nuts and bolts of all of the finances, there's not going to be the creative person. They're not going to be the person that's got vision and dreams and desires and ideas on how to creatively find solutions in different areas. Typically, who you are shows up in those things that you do and you add process to. So knowing who you are, knowing the identity statement will show you the value that you can bring to your organization and show you those areas where you need to maybe bring somebody alongside as you can. I know solo entrepreneurs and business owners like myself, sometimes you wear every hat because you don't have the money for anybody else. But once you do, you'll start to understand those areas where I have maximum impact and those areas where maybe somebody else can come in and bring more value in those things. So it all starts with this. What are you telling yourself first thing in the morning? How are you pre-programming your day? If you start with who you are, you'll be able to live it out. And the second thing is, we have a 3-step transformational strategy, mastering your thoughts, words, and actions. Here's the interesting thing about thoughts. Nobody can entertain 2 thoughts in their head at the same time. And the title of my book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, Not by Default. Many of us live from default. Those mantras, those affirmations that you and I talked about earlier, a lot of times we'll use those things when something comes up. I'm stressed, I'm worried, imposter syndrome, I'm anxious right now. So I'm going to, I am a man of faith, I am a man of power, I am a man of success, or whatever the thing is you're beating your thoughts into submission with. We try and fight them after they happen versus give ourselves thoughts to think ahead of time. So when you start your day telling yourself who you are, lo and behold, that man starts to show up when a stressful situation happens, when a challenge comes up in your business, your relationships, in your life. When you start to remind yourself before life happens, you'll show up as the person you're created to be when life happens. The big, if you wanted to look at the phrase for what we try and do with our work, I help you to unlock and unleash your hero in hiding in your business, relationships, and life. When you understand that hero person, the identity of who you are, that hero starts to show up in your business and your relationships and life. If you start with that, that's how you're going to live life by design, not by default. And that's how you're going to find transformation, not just habits. Sometimes we try and use habits, and habits you use to get there, you have to use to stay there, which means at some equilibrium, it's because I have these habits in my life. But what we're working on is transformation, you unleashing who you are. And in that place, you don't have to remind yourself who you are, because you'll start to show up as the hero you were created to be.
So our habits are those, of course, those things that we're just obvious. I mean, we do it because we've always done it, but it sounds like we need to change those habits, and with mindset being a part of that. If we change those habits, then we change how we see ourselves and how we know and understand ourselves. Then the outcome of what we're working on, be it business or life or relationships, etc., that'll change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fruit or a root issue. There's most programs that I've been a part of, most of them that I see, they deal with the fruit issue. So anxiety, fear, worry, imposter syndrome comes up, and then I attack it with a generic affirmation that's supposed to stop it and supposed to convince me that I'm somebody I'm not. They never work out ever, but they give you a good habit so you can silence that voice in your head just for a little while. So you tell yourself, I'm powerful, I'm powerful, I'm powerful, when this fear of failure comes up. And then it'll be quiet for a while, and then it comes up again the next time. And then the next time something happens. And then the next time, there's a downturn in the market. And the next time there's a client who didn't pay you and you're having to chase it down. And those things come up. It's dealing with the fruit. You can't kill a tree by taking the fruit off of it. You can only kill it by dealing with the root. And the root isn't the emotion. It's the identity statement that says, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. I'm not somebody that's capable. I'm not smart as. I'm not going to be successful. By creating an identity statement and knowing who you are, you deal with the root of it, and the fruit never shows up, because again, I'm living from that place of who I am.
Fascinating. We're getting toward the end of the show, and I really want to say thank you. I mean, this has been a lot of really powerful information. And I'm going to reiterate what I said at the top of the show. Mindset as a business owner, I have been learning in my own journey. More so, less as a photographer, but more as a business owner. Mindset is probably 80% of what we do when we show up every day. And getting in the right mindset and having the right mindset about business and about our goals and our accomplishments. That is the probably the biggest thing to make those shifts in, and that's what we've been spending the last 45 minutes or so talking about. Where else? What other materials should we be looking at? Because we've talked about I am statements. We talked about understanding who we truly are, who we're truly created to be, and starting that journey, which in and of itself is, I think, mind blowing and can be somewhat daunting. Say, oh my God, I was actually created to be something very specific. I was created to be something more than maybe just how I'm defining myself by my externals.
Yeah.
That can be, I think, for so many people, that can be a very daunting process. But what other things should we be thinking about that maybe we haven't touched on in the last 45 minutes or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing I would say, for sure, it seems like it's daunting because we're providing all sorts of new material and ideas for people. But here's the interesting thing, Douglas. You're already using these, not you, Douglas, specifically, but you as in anybody who's listening to this. So creating identity, really what we're doing is we're reframing our identity with the truth, because we already are living from an identity statement. That's how we're having the outcomes. That's how we're having the mindsets. That's how we're having that internal dialogue. That's how we're having whatever level of success, accomplishment, relationship that we're in. It's simply coming from who we believe we are being lived out. And so that's not something new as much as it's a reframing to the truth so that you're not living from the lie. And then the 3-step transformational strategy of mastering your thoughts, words, and actions, the secret that many people probably don't realize is you're already using those. but they're probably more disempowering than empowering. They're probably affirming failure rather than celebrating success. And in that place, again, it's a reframing and an understanding of how do we use these to our benefit, life by design, not by default. Life by default is they happen and I try and manage them when they come up, right? My negative thought happens and I try and bludgeon it with a generic mantra, or I speak out, negativity towards myself, or I'm speaking these things out that, right? Speaking them into existence is something that you talk about in the personal development realm. But here's the interesting thing. There's a biomechanical truth in this, that the words that we speak do two things for ourselves. They affirm who we believe we are, right? You can't have a voice that you speak that doesn't start with a thought in your head. So I tell people this, here's how I can find out what you believe about yourself. If I can just talk with you long enough, because who you believe you are will come out in the words that you say. But here's the interesting thing. It's not just affirming the things that I believe about myself, but it's giving my brain instruction to live out. Here's the interesting thing about our brain structures, and we don't have time to go into kind of the neuroplastic structures or the decision-making capabilities of our brain. But here's the interesting.
We will handle the biology of that. That's that. Yeah, no.
No, exactly. But here's the truth of the matter. The words you speak affirm who you are, and they give your brain instructions to live out. When I tell myself I'm a failure, whether in my thoughts or in my words, when I tell myself I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I can't believe I did that again, I'm such an, all these things that we tell ourselves, you give your brain instructions to live it out. So then you start to make decisions that prove that I'm dumb. You start to see your life in places where you've made mistakes and failures versus successes and achievements. Sounds like that accomplishment list that we talked about in reverse, right? The reason behind that accomplishment list is, again, day to day, show myself that I'm a success, but it's counteracting those words that I may be telling myself, and it's giving me a vision towards
your brain to work on the opposite side.
Exactly. And both of them are the truth, but the one you focus on is the one you'll live. The truth is, I'm not that I'm stupid, but I did make a mistake. I didn't make the right decision. I didn't take the right direction, right there. That's undeniable. But the challenge is when I start to believe that means that I'm stupid, that I'm a failure, that I'm not worth it. That's when you start to change your life, to start to minimize the successes and maximize the failures. So again, mastering your words. What are the words you say? Not about your environment, the things you walk through necessarily, but what are the words you're saying about yourself first? Are you believing you're the question to be figured out, or the answer walking into the room? And then the actions one, we all already create actions, right? No choice is a choice. And so I've been in that place where I was potentially going to start a business, but talked myself out of it. Potentially going to take a big leap towards something that could be successful, but it didn't work out last time. So I'm just going to pass on this one. And it doesn't mean you don't walk in wisdom and learn from the things that you've done, but many times we talk ourselves out of the success we're meant to have because we believe we're not somebody capable of doing it. And so that action part, right, the phrase I told you earlier on, unleashing your hero and hiding, there's something we do to unpack that and start to understand. We're mastering your thoughts, really starting to using your thoughts by design, using your words by design. The actions by design is really the answer to this question. That hero that we're talking about, that person on the inside that wants to be let out, what does that person look like lived out? This challenging conversation that you're walking into, what would the hero you do? How would they deal with it? How would they have a conversation about it? What bold things would they do to resolve it? And in your business, that hero person that you are, right? You're walking through a challenge, or you have to have a direction, or you have to choose a path for your business or your product or what have you. What would the hero person do? Would they hesitate? Would they delay? Would they overanalyze? Or would they make a solid choice with the best information and move forward quickly and specifically to solve that issue? So you look like something lived out, and you're already looking like that person. But if you can align it with the person you're created to be, that hero on the inside, you'll start to see faster successes, bolder actions, greater dreams, and more successes, because you're living from who you are and you're creating the success that you deserve and you're designed for.
And I love the when you walk into the room, are you the question or are you the answer? I love that thought process. Is who you are the question to be asked, or the answer that's ready to be given? I just love that concept. that's a mind-blowing concept for it's a mind-changing concept. So Mark, if someone wants to know more and reach out to you and learn more about your programs and your books and your materials, and I know you got several classes as well, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Douglas. I try to be a one-stop shop, and so my one-stop shop is my website, which is freedom-for-life.net. You see it on the screen now if you're watching it on video. So freedom-for-life.net. The course that we talked about, Life Mastery, is on there. I have a couple of other supplemental courses as well, but that's really the bells and whistles. The one in green is the one for you. That brings all of the robust teaching, all of the transformational strategies, one-on-one coaching, and all of that. That's on my website. Also, if you were to scroll through my website, you'd see an ebook version of my book. So if you want to have a book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, not by default, on any device that you have, you'd be able to get it there. So all of those things are there. As well as if you want to reach out to me specifically, you can reach me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at freedom-for-life.net. And I'd be happy to have any conversation with you about Life Mastery as well.
Fantastic. Folks, be sure to reach out to Mark for more information. It's obvious that I think he can help many people change your mindset and change how we start thinking about ourselves so that we're living from a point of who we are created to be, not how society and outward experiences define us. Mark, I appreciate you coming out today. Folks, if you'd like to know more about me, there's my information, dmbproductions.com. For any of your commercial photography needs, I'd love to chat with you about that, especially if you're in the greater Houston, Southeast Texas region. I'm happy to hop in my car, hop on a plane. That's not a problem either. So feel free to reach out. Mark, I think we're going to end it there. Thanks again for being my guest this morning and getting up early, because I know Mark's out in Southern Cal, so it's a good 2 hours ahead of me, or I should say behind me. Hopefully you had at least a cup of coffee before we got started.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Douglas, and have a great time with the rodeo in March.
Oh, I always do. It's a great time. Folks, we're going to end it there. Thanks so much.